Good morning, everyone. I am Kamla Rampersad de Silva, Chief Executive Officer of the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the first of our many sessions planned for this year, 2025. I am joining you from beautiful Jamaica this morning, where the Jamaica Stock Exchange just completed their 20th anniversary conference. Congratulations to you, Andre, and your team, led by Marlene Street Forest. The Jamaica Stock Exchange, for persons who may not be aware, was voted twice as the best performing stock exchange in the world and is an example of how we in the region can successfully aspire to be among the world's best, especially if we embrace effective governance practices. And this is what we are here to discuss today. I also would like to share that we are live streaming all of today's discussion on our YouTube channel, and we are also casting it on our LinkedIn and Facebook pages as well. So, hello to everyone who has joined us via these medium, and thank you very much, Warren Anderson, for making this happen. As I express appreciation to Warren, our social media support for the excellent work he's doing, I would also like to recognize the CCGI team who have helped contribute to the success of many of you being present today. Even as we encourage our organizations to improve their governance practices and sustainability, we too must do the same for CCGI. So a major focus for us this year is choosing the right people on our team and ensuring that they are equipped with the right skills to work effectively. So you will be hearing from them in the next few months. But at this time, I want to acknowledge and thank Laura Sinanan, Jacqueline Deschaussee, Quentrell De Silva, and Jeremy Logan for their hard work. We have a range of freelance support staff who are assisting us in our efforts as well. And so I am very sure that you will see an improvement in the quality of all that we do. And now let me also welcome all of you who are present to today's session. Many of you are members of CCGI and regular attendees to our events. So thank you so much for your continued support. You will be hearing a lot more from us, our members, because we plan to enhance our membership engagement even as we execute our very ambitious agenda for this year. And now, still, I would like to share a little bit about CCGI. Established as a nonprofit membership organization in 2012, the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute currently enjoys over 300 members from a range of private and public sector organizations across the Caribbean region. We are pleased to share that these include persons from Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Barbados, Belize, St. Lucia, Guyana, the British Virgin Islands, St. Martin, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. If any of you are here from any other country that we have not named, we look forward to having you enroll and become members here with us. So as in previous years, we plan to host a wide range of workshops and panel discussions on evolving issues in governance, as well as, of course, our signature event, Governance Week, and our two-day global conference. All of these are held online to easily facilitate persons throughout the Caribbean region. Managing risk in our organizations are crucial, especially financial risk. And so next week, we have a 3-day workshop on identifying fraud, red flags in financial statements with Janita John from South Africa as our facilitator. You don't want to miss this session. Please make sure that your directors and senior officers who are not already versed in finance to register for this workshop because the financial statements are the key to understanding strengths and some material weaknesses in your organization. And to the end of this month, we are hosting a panel discussion on AI and cybersecurity featuring Shiva Bisessa from Trinidad and Tobago, Patricia Rosil from Barbados, and Ricardo Allen from Jamaica. And they would be exploring how AI is evolving, and in many ways it will be disrupting businesses, both in good ways and bad. We have offered New Year's gifts to many of our members with free registration to this session. And this is intended to be only the start of our membership engagement exercises moving forward. So definitely our members, you'd be hearing more from us. Now, many of you would recall that we launched a new 2024 corporate governance code for Trinidad and Tobago in October last year. This year, we plan to focus on building awareness and adoption of the code. To that end, we plan to hold a breakfast session at the Trinidad Hilton on Thursday, February 8th from 7 a.m. Details on this is on our website along with a range of other events that we have opened for registration for this year. So if you are not yet a member, do consider joining us and actively contribute to the conversation on how we can improve leadership and governance to achieve sustainable outcomes. Persons may join us as individual members, or your companies may choose to pay for bundle membership, which can cover from 6 to 12 members. As a member, you get discounted rates to attend many of the events and activities planned for this year, as well as from time to time, we will surprise you with a complimentary registration. Now, as we get into today's panel discussion, I'd just like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Uh, Please, we like to ask everyone to ensure that your name is correctly captured on your screens. We are in a virtual room together, which allows everyone to access and freely engage with the other participants. So we'd like to ensure that everyone is easily identifiable. We would like to ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute throughout the session. If during the panel discussion you wish to make a comment, you can raise your hand using the icon at the bottom of your screen, or you can put your comment in the chat feature. If you're invited to speak, please make sure you mute your mic again as soon as you complete your contribution. So those of you who need to earn CPDs or PDUs as part of your ongoing certification, you may use these sessions to claim your points. However, to get your certificate of participation with the CPD hours, you need to email us. We do not automatically give these certificates for the panel discussions. So email us making your request, and we will ensure that we verify your attendance before issuing the certificate with the CPD hours. Finally, we will put a survey link towards the end of today's session. Those of you who attend regularly know that this is standard practice with us. We try to collect your feedback. And so we would sincerely appreciate if you take the time to click on the link when it is shared and give us your feedback, please. Now, I'd like to briefly introduce our moderator, who I will then hand over to manage today's panel discussion. So Richard Leo, really amazing young guy from Guyana. Richard currently serves in the dual role as the Economic and Commercial Specialist at the U.S. Embassy in Georgetown, Guyana. He previously served 6 years in the private sector in Guyana. Now, I would speak very briefly about Richard because his profile, along with that of all of our panelists, has been shared in the agenda which was sent to you earlier today. Richard recently became executive director for Amcham Guyana, which is an amazing position that we hope to be able to build greater connections with CCGI and organizations in Guyana, so that we can also help influence and improve corporate governance practices in that country. Richard is also an economist, just sharing a little bit more, who worked at Sterling Products. And Richard, if I may say, he's a past student of mine. I met him while he was doing his MBA program, an outstanding student then, and I will tell you, I continue to be impressed with the wonderful work he has been doing. He's extremely passionate about economic development and strengthening the governance of institutions, which means that there's just a really great alignment of his values and ours as we would be working together more closely later this year. So, Richard, we are very happy to have you to participate and be our moderator for our very first panel discussion for this year. So, I'm going to hand over the podium to you now so that you can introduce your panelists and take over today's session.
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction, Kamala. And good morning, everyone. And welcome to our session on developing good governance for running an effective stock exchange. Now, the long and short of it is we have some very special people, Andre Gooden from the Jamaica Stock Exchange, Joy Ramlogan from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, and Marlon Yarde from the Barbados Stock Exchange. So to perhaps begin our session, I'd like maybe for Andre, followed by Joy and Marlon, to give a brief introduction of themselves. And then we can perhaps dive into a conversation on what good corporate governance means. So Andre, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Richard. And good morning to all the colleagues online. We're coming off a pretty hectic week. The Jamaica Stock Exchange's Regional Investment and Capital Markets Conference finished yesterday officially, but last night unofficially. And it has been 3 very good days. Those of you who participated, thank you for doing so. I see Kamala, I see Marlon, I see Eva, and others. And I hope that you found it as rewarding as I did. So yes, so my name is Andre Gooden. I'm the Group Business Development Manager for the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Been with the organization for 5 years exactly. January 20th will be 5 years. The portfolio really involves just managing the relationships, uncovering the opportunities globally to help us to continue to be relevant, 1, and 2, to generate revenues from new products and services as the market needs evolve. That will be the short part of the profile. We have spent a lot of time focusing on market sensitization, market development, market education in the last 10 or 15 years. And what it has led to is a great appetite for information on the market, and a lot of investment has been made also in youth at the school and university levels, and those persons who 15 years ago had piqued their interest are now employed in various roles and they're active in the market. So we have been thinking very long term in terms of growth, and it has assisted us in remaining relevant to as our cohort becomes younger and younger. We have drifted a lot more towards technology. During COVID, I think our online trading went up about 30%, and it has tapered off somewhat, but it is still growing double digits every year. So we see some merit to that strategy. And of course, the advent of social media to keep younger investors interested and engaged is also something that has propelled the Jamaica Stock Exchange as to where it is now. So that would be my brief introduction, Mr. MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andre. And that was very colorful. And we look forward to learning a bit more on the growth and the lessons learned from Jamaica. So now I'd like to invite Ms. Joy Ramlogan from Trinidad.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning to everyone. I'm the Regulatory, Legal and Compliance Officer at the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. So the sins that are covered are, in fact, would have a lot to do with corporate governance and keeping the exchange legal, as well as advising as transactions come through the market. And in my department are the compliance team that ensures that the rules are apply. And we're in a stage of great change at the stock market. We are overhauling our rules, which has been going on for a few years now, and having a lot of interaction in terms of what will make the stock market continue to be relevant and to develop. Trinidad and Tobago has had some challenges with the pandemic and post-pandemic. So expanding the reach of the exchange to investors who did not think before of investing through investor education, and also listening to the market to make a better enabling environment is a critical, I would say, a critical mission of the stock exchange at this time. So I'm looking forward to the session, and thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Joy. And I would like to say that one thing that you just spoke about, developing a better business enabling environment, that is something which remains critical for the Caribbean region across as it seeks to invite and attract more investment globally. So with that, I'd like to invite Marlon Yarde from Barbados to give a quick introduction of both himself and the Barbados stock market.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me thank CCGI for allowing me to be part of this panel. Thank you, Kamala. Really appreciate it. I am the managing director of the Barbados Stock Exchange. I've been with the stock exchange for last November was 21 years. So I have seen a lot happen at the exchange over the years, and there's a lot more that we need to do to really develop our markets and develop the contribution that the Barbados Stock Exchange makes to the economic development of the Barbados, and dare I say, to the region. We work very closely with the Jamaica Stock Exchange, the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, and also the Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange. We're a small fraternity. We know each other, and I can truly say that we are friends, although we compete in the marketplace for business. Healthy competition and respectful relationships amongst us. There are three companies within the Barbados Stock Exchange group of companies. There's the Barbados Central Securities Depository, Inc., which acts as the registrar and transfer agent for companies listed on the exchange. We also do transfer agency work for clients in our third company in the group, the BCSDI Custodian and Trust Company, where we offer trust and custodian services for the financial institutions in Barbados. It's by law, insurance companies, pension funds, and some listed companies have assets, have assets that are for the benefit of the clients, and they need to have an independent third party as custodian. So we've recently gone into that business. And matter of fact, I would call it a COVID baby business. We started it in the throes of the pandemic, and it's working for us. We do have separate boards for each of those companies, although there are some overlap with, say, the chairman and one or two other directors on all the boards of the particular company. Our board structure is basically that of members and the shareholders of the company. We can talk more as the event goes on. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, so great. So maybe let's kick this off, and I'd like to pose this question to Joy first, and then we'll go to Marlon and Andre. But Joy, from your experience, how would you describe a successful stock exchange, and what would be the role of good governance in terms of fostering this successful stock exchange?
Well, thanks.
He get the less because it's 3,000.
Sorry. Yes. So thanks for starting off with the big question. So what is a successful stock exchange? As I said, there are, of course, rankings about the best performing exchanges, which have the best indices. There's a lot of different metrics. A successful stock exchange in our context in Trinidad and Tobago would be one which is growing and expanding. That's where we would like to be. So we would like to get more participation by our both local and regional companies to list on our exchange, to expand their range of products on the exchange, as well as to expand the investor base. So that critically, besides the macroeconomics of the country, of course, which would have a huge impact on people's willingness to come to the capital markets, because it really does depends on whether you can give the access to capital, which people normally want. We also have to look at investor confidence, and actually that's something that the history of the exchange shows a real development, because the exchange started in 81 in order to formalize trading in Trinidad and Tobago. So it was the second such formal exchange in the CARICOM region. And by 95, because all the functions were under the exchange, there was a separation. And so that's how we have the regulatory body, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, which now has the exchange and the depository for the settlement of trades. That's very important in terms of looking at investor confidence, because both organizations have investor confidence as part of their mission. The Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission is charged with enforcing the law, as well as ensuring that there is protection of investors from unfair, improper, and fraudulent practices. And on the other side, our exchange has the trading rules and is particularly responsible to facilitate both efficient mobilization of and allocation of capital, so that we can have proper price discovery. So that's all good governance aspects inside there. For it to be efficient mobilization and allocation, you need to have the kind of timely, robust, resilient, accurate information out in the market, so that people can make informed decisions, right? And with that, what we have found is the ability to listen to the market. So a good example of that is our attempts to develop the SME side of the market, because there's several local enterprises, family-owned, which are of the size that would have benefit of the SME market and certain tax incentives we have. So there was, they launched the market earlier the last decade and came with new listing rules and a new governance framework for mentors to be appointed. This is 2022, so that the SMEs could be taken to market with an expert advice, as well as after these change in listing rules, we've been listening to the market and had some other changes brought to the SEC for approval to respond to the requirements of our companies. In doing that, we're hoping to get more companies listed, so there's more options available for investors, as well as while we pursue investor education and with our brokers to get more investors interested in coming to the market and expanding the base. We have a huge presence now on social media with all the various open, transparent communication. So to back it up, good governance, there's all these studies on good governance in stock markets, and they look at the normal shopping list of good governance that you expect in terms of how boards operate, how they communicate to stakeholders, etc. Particularly for stock exchanges, I think good governance is not only internal, it's not the same as the internally focused corporate governance that people normally think about, which has got more externally because we think about the economic, social, good governance goals and those types of indices. The legal regime is extremely important to us because we're a self-regulatory organization. So having the correct structure, and laws tend to be much stickier in terms of moving with the market, is excessively important, so that we have a lot, I would say, communication not only with the market and listening to the market, but also having that stakeholder engagement with our regulators, not just the TTCIC, but critical stakeholders in that regulatory firmament, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Finance, etc., in order to have the changes that we need to make the stock market more responsive and to address the key issues that we see arising. So, for example, at our conference, there was a launch of the liquidity index, which we are developing, which will hopefully give more information to the market about the status of liquidity in the market and hopefully of different stocks and companies. So communication, we think, is key, as well as adherence to good governance practices, because the last thing you need is Ponzi schemes like Bernie Madoff in the market, or bad accounting practices like the Enron and WorldCom disasters, which in the New York Stock Exchange, which is known to be well documented, well regulated, came like nuclear bombs, right? So in small markets, the need to scan the market and to use both the formal information that we see in the data, because we're online now. We've been electronic since 2005, so we have a lot of information, and we're doing a lot of data mining, data scanning, data analysis to understand what is driving the various trends that we're seeing in the market. Yes, so I think we also want to encourage amongst our stakeholders, the market participants, good corporate governance, and that's how we've partnered with the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber and the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute for the new Trinidad and Tobago Corporate Governance Code that Kamala spoke about. In fact, the first governance code was also a joint initiative with the TT Chamber and the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute. So we have a great stake in improving governance in Trinidad and Tobago. Last year, the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute and the Arthur Lockjack Institute of Business at UE did an assessment, and I think it's an annual assessment now, Kamala, right? Of the publicly available annual reports and by our listed companies, and was able to do an assessment based on the corporate governance code of how they lined up in terms of corporate governance, which was very illuminating report on where our listed companies are and where they have to go. So I don't know if I'm talking too much, but I think I'll stop here.
That was perfect, Joy. And you brought out a few key thematic areas where I think should be highlighted. So one, growing the stock exchange and expanding the range of investors on the market, and more or less speaking to the investor confidence, which actually is demonstrated by people's willingness to come to the capital markets. Now, a broad issue that I've looked at from the US perspective has been, how can we have U.S. export credit agencies assist in growing, especially MSMEs. Reason is, recently Guyana did a gas energy deal, and there are several other small deals being done with the US Exim that we're aware of. Now, what I think needs to be addressed at another session potentially could be what are good practices in terms of developing financial markets. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marlon to share his views on what would be a good role of the good governance in achieving success for a stock market.
Thank you very much. I always say stock exchange business is like any other business out there. I use the terminology my wife always says, I'm just a one-door shopkeeper buying something and selling something. So we're same with stock exchange. We buy information because information is the key to a well-functioning capital market, and we sell that information to the investing public out there, so that they can make decisions about their investments. So in my view, a successful stock exchange is built on a foundation of efficiency, transparency, trust, and adaptability to the changing needs of the marketplace. And these are all issues that Joy has basically covered in her presentation. The market needs to be efficient. It's judged by the liquidity in the market. It needs to be transparent. People need to know what is going on in the marketplace, and particularly the companies that are listed on the exchange and developments in the overall economy. This in turn builds trust, and we do what we need to do to adapt to the marketplace, as we need to make sure that we do not undermine that confidence and trust. So these stock exchanges acts as a catalyst for economic growth by facilitating the efficient allocation of capital and investment opportunities. So there are a number of features of a successful marketplace, and again, bear in mind what I said at the beginning. We're like any other business. We need to have systems in place. We need to, have, good accounting functions, good management in place, separation of duties, everything that you would see in any other business happens at a stock exchange. But one of the things that is very unique to stock exchange is that we are highly regulated bodies, and we have the responsibility as a self-regulatory organization under the Securities Act to make rules for our brokers and for the persons listed on the stock exchange, which our regulator still has oversight over. So we work in conjunction with the regulators to ensure that we are doing things the right way and we are regulating in the right way. One of the things I like to highlight all the time when it comes to the regulation of the market and stock exchanges as a whole is that we follow rules under IOSCO, the International Organization of Securities Commissions, and there's 3 basic objectives and 38 principles that IOSCO have. And everything we say goes back to these 3 objectives. We need to protect the investor. Our rules and what we do and how we monitor the market ensures that we protect the investor. We have to make sure that the market is fair, efficient, and transparent. And I alluded to that before. The information put out there must be available to investors to make their informed decisions. And then finally, and a very important objective of IOSCO is that we need to reduce or ensure that there's a reduction in systemic risk in the marketplace. And what do I mean by systemic risk? Anything that can cause harm to the capital markets as a whole, in Barbados, in your jurisdiction as a whole. We need to make sure that our rules, or how we operate, cover these things. But there are other features that should be considered as it relates to making sure that we have a successful market, that we have a successful stock exchange. There must be robust regulatory framework. And again, Joy spoke about her rules that they're changing, making sure that they come in line with international best practice. compliance and investor protection is key in making sure that those rules that we develop are robust enough to ensure that there's no misinformation in the marketplace. Another key element of any stock exchange is that there must be market liquidity. And all that is that people can convert their shares that they hold into cash easily. So there needs to be depth in the marketplace. Now, some exchanges, I contend that exchanges in the Caribbean, we cannot compare our liquidity to other markets because of the sheer size. Barbados, for example, we have a population of about 300,000 people, working population about 110, 120,000 people. The numbers are small. So we need to work together with other markets, say Trinidad, Jamaica, Eastern Caribbean, Bahamas, so that we create the numbers. And even when we consider the whole of CARICOM together, we are still a very small market compared globally. So we got to find ways as exchanges in the region to work together. So that is important, market liquidity. And this ensures that ease of trading and that we get as many people as possible involved in the capital markets. And that goes to education. The technological infrastructure must be there to make sure that trading is efficient. Again, we keep saying the same words, efficiency in the marketplace is key. We want to make our markets attractive so that persons outside of our jurisdiction and even outside of the CARICOM region want to participate. So there must be integration among the exchanges in the Caribbean area so that we are attractive to investors in the global market. And at some point, we need to make sure that we integrate into the global markets as well. So integration is key. We need to make sure that we have diverse products. As I said from the beginning, we're all buying something and we're all selling something. And the product that we have on our board is securities of the listed companies. So we foster economic growth, economic stability and growth. That is one of the things that we suffer from in the Caribbean. When we look at all of our markets, save and except Guyana, whose GDP raises by double digits and even big numbers like 35% or whatever. But what the capital markets does and what stock exchanges help in doing is create economic growth for our people in the region. And that economic growth can come from, again, investments within the region or even bigger investments from outside of the region. So when, for example, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, as you highlighted before, or Joy highlighted before, no, Kamala highlighted before, sorry. They were best performing exchanges in two particular years, 2015 and 2018. And that, again, gives people confidence that we can do business in this jurisdiction and we can invest our capital in this jurisdiction. Education and investor awareness is another key component of ensuring that we make our markets attractive and make it efficient, make the markets very liquid and very deep is a very important thing. So those are the main components in my view as it relates to having a successful market and ensuring the success of your exchange in a particular jurisdiction. I'll end there for now.
Thank you, Marlon. And you made a statement in particularly speaking about people in terms of creating growth for the people, right? And that goes back to fundamentally development for your people. Because I mean, in Guyana has grown last year by about 43%, and the non-oil sector is about over 13%. So that speaks to a lot of growth. And it sort of translates to the stock market as well, whereby you've seen most companies posting profits of over 20% year on year. So at this point in time, I'd just like for Andre Gooden to sort of round out our discussion on the role of good governance in achieving success for the stock markets.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, I just had a little audio issue. The building next door is under construction, and despite how powerful Kamala is, we couldn't get them to shut it down for 2 hours. So if you hear the noise, forgive me, please. One of the things I would say is the story of good governance and the story of just telling a little bit of the story of the stock exchange would probably best highlight what is required to achieve a successful framework. I would start by saying that our mantra has been investor education, continued sustained market education to attract new players and to attract new businesses, both issuers and investors into the market. That entails a whole series of events. We started in 1967, basically with some large corporates, some of whom were based overseas, lending each other money, and then formalizing that by issuing equities in each other's entities. It ended up looking like a closed shop for, the wealthy and for large corporates. And that continued for a few years. And then the significantly, as deregulation of the economy took place, and there was more liberalization, I should say, of our economy, the opportunity to raise capital for businesses became more significant and more important as the capacity of the commercial banks in the region, even though some of them were overseas based, was limited by their Canadian or other partners saying, look here, this place is a risk, let's not throw the kitchen sink at it. So businesses had to really evolve and find other ways to capitalize their growth. That helped the growth of the stock exchange. Our meteoric growth really started in early 2000. In 2006, we demutualized the stock exchange, and then eventually we listed on our own market, set up a regulatory and market oversight division independent of the stock exchange. And this led to greater and greater opportunities coming out. In that same period, we 2 years went on the road with the Jamaica's investment promotion agency, JAMPRO. We had road shows in North America, UK, and Canada, which galvanized really Caribbean people and brought the recognition and the opportunity to repatriate funds to your native land and to the region. And that stimulated great interest in the stock exchange, so much that we stopped going with JAMPRO after a while and we went on our own and took some of our broker dealers with us. And they all came back with books of business. Because when we, in a seminar, of course, we're not investment advisors. We speak, and Joy would nod when I say that. We give them the information. We tell them that we're facilitators. And Marlon, we know there's a thin line between investment advice and investment facilitation. So we have to be very, very careful in doing that. So in telling the story about the stock market and how stocks work in a global environment, or locally for that matter, we piggybacked on our 2 or 3 of our brokers who came with us on these road shows, which started overseas, brought significant interest. And then we replicated that same thing locally, starting at the university level, going down to the high school level. And I'm happy to report that a company out of Trinidad that is now offering us a platform which we're going to be introducing in primary schools, which is a stock market game, very simplified, which again, as you can understand, Richard, if you interest children who are 10 and 11 years old, when they get to university, they'll be experts. And then when they graduate and get employed into the economy, they will be seasoned investors, and you just have to continue the trend in that regard. So a big part of the growth and development of any stock exchange has to be market education, continuing to educate. And the second thing I would point out is continue to add value. The Jamaica Stock Exchange Group has diversified so much over the last 15 to 20 years. The Jamaica Stock Exchange is the main entity. Then, we started in some time ago, 2000, the Jamaica Central Securities Depository, quite like Barbados. We also further evolved into a JCSD trustee services, offering trust services to companies, not just listed companies, but any entity looking for that kind of thing. We also diversified further by opening a division called the Jamaica Stock Exchange eCampus, which speaks for itself, offers distance learning. We were doing this long before COVID, so when COVID happened, it really wasn't a surprise to us. Continue to offer capacity building training in corporate governance, in how to read financial statements, in how to manage a balance sheet, basics 1, 2, 3 of investing, Caribbean securities course, and several. Right now, data privacy, of course, is a big one. Where our last data privacy course was oversubscribed to the point where institutions are coming to us now asking us to bring the story to them rather than them having to move their offices to our lecture hall or our online campus. Have us come physically in their staff meetings, etc., to do bite-sized training in data protection. So that's another diversified element, market education and general capacity building. Separate and apart from that, we embarked on a data commercialization initiative, which led firstly to the formation of the Caribbean Business Exchange, CBX, this is Stock Exchange's cable channel, which is available in all your regions through Flow and the digital platform, and is also broadcasting live on jamstockx.com, the Jamaica Stock Exchange website. Again, market education, giving more information and making it more available and accessible to individuals. And they play a key part in the conference just done. CBX was, I think, the broadcast provider for our local television stations as well. So they didn't have to set up, they just took our feed, which gave us even more visibility. And again, focusing on market education and distribution of information. So in former times, the stock market and stock market investing had a stigma of it's a rich man's game. What we have done is demystified it and brought it down to a basic level. Of course, with that, the corporate governance role is very significant. I think the role of corporate governance really is to protect shareholders' interests, which we have to do as an exchange, promoting transparency and accountability, encouraging investors and issuers to share as much as possible the information of their operations to the public, giving people the opportunity to think, to analyze, and to make their own decisions with the guidance of their investment advisors, of course. It ensures market fair practices and ensures that no one gets the information before the other. It sort of negates the possibility of insider trading. Sustainability is another key. It promotes sustainable long-term growth. In doing all our education, we have to continue to stress that this is not an overnight game. Young people nowadays come into the market. A lot of them came into the market, Kamala, when in 2013, 14, that was the last big wave. And they rode that wave significantly up until 2019, after we were, as Marlon indicated, made by Bloomberg, announced as the best performing stock exchange in the world, 2015, 2018. That, of course, the criteria for those are some of what I've already mentioned. Investor information, transparency, accountability, proper governance, market performance of the market generally and of the companies listed on the market, and a general ability to support the growth of your economy. So investor confidence is another big one. It enhances the reputation of companies listed on the market. Many companies have come to us and said they had problems raising capital, eventually got a balance sheet good enough to become a listed company. And all the people who were there trying to borrow from previously and turn them down suddenly came running back to them when they saw that they're now listed companies with transparent and available financials and good, solid reputation listed on an organized exchange, whether in Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, wherever. So they couldn't get money to borrow before. And now when they are properly capitalized and don't need money to borrow, is when all the financial institutions came running back to them. So the importance of good governance and transparency and compliance with regulatory requirements assist companies and assist stock exchanges in becoming relevant. Of course, the key players in that are the board of directors, the management, the auditors, the regulatory bodies as well. One thing I would point out in the Jamaica Stock Exchange case is that we also developed a corporate governance index, which we're very proud of. And I see Kamla nodding, in association with the private sector organization of Jamaica and the Inter-American Development Bank, which evaluates the governance practices of listed companies on the market, hold them to a certain standard, such as the PSOJ code, the OECD principles, and the UK corporate governance codes. And this evaluation helps, of course, investors to make better financial decisions. Same transparency, we spoke about, accountability and oversight, and protect shareholders' rights and protection. Out of this, 20 years ago, not coincidentally, we started what we call the Best Practices Awards, where on an annual basis in December, we analyze the companies listed on the market for certain key characteristics, the role of their corporate governance, their corporate social responsibility, the quality of the information on their website, the customer service support for the various listed companies, and also for the broker dealers, the quality of their annual reports, their risk management practices, etc., etc. What it has done is it has developed an intense competition among listed companies, among broker dealers, and other entities to achieve the high level of being awarded the Jamaica Stock Exchange Best Practice Award in whatever category. So much so that it brings up the entire market and the quality of the performance and the governance in all markets. The last thing I'd mention, Richard, is the Jamaica Stock Exchange Junior Market. This now, of course, is where the rubber actually hit the road. I was telling Kamla off air that we started in 2009 with, we launched the product without even having a single issuer. 9 months later, we got one company listed on the junior market. And now 50% of the companies listed on the market are junior market companies, MSMEs, growing companies who raise between 50 million and 500 million Jamaican dollars on the market. These companies are small MSME companies before who struggled with their capital, relied on their bankers, and didn't necessarily always have in place all the requirements, governance or otherwise, to obtain capital from the bank. Coming into the framework now of the junior market, you have a template of things that you have to have: good governance, good financial structure, good operating structures to be able to produce financial results on a timely basis to keep the market aware and up to date, good marketing and customer service templates in place. And this has led to small companies now becoming medium companies, now becoming compliant with all the Jamaican and international standards for performance. And it has led to tremendous boost to the Jamaican economy, the GDP. These companies are now in the formal system, paying income tax, paying payroll tax, etc. So the governments benefit as well in terms of increasing the coffers. And they, of course, the big one, they create employment. So in summary, it will be market education and continuing to add value to your stakeholders, which will continue to stimulate interest. Going forward, those of us who were at the Stock Exchange seminar conference, we saw at least, correct me, Marlon, 3 presentations on AI and the importance of artificial intelligence going forward in business. We saw a couple of presentations as well on the importance of governance, and more importantly, a lot on climate change, climate risk, and climate financing. So looking forward, as regional exchanges, we need to factor the risk side of these into our corporate governance codes to say, how are we going to manage climate bonds, raising capital to combat and to provide solutions to climate change. I said the last thing, but there's one more thing. The Jamaica Stock Exchange launched green sustainable and sustainable linked bond guide in July, which sets the framework for us establishing a market to issue green bonds in 2025, which again adds more value to your market, brings more investments in, because we all know that globally there's a lot of cash out there looking for green and sustainable investment. So we expect that this will attract more capital, investment capital into the country, and also assist local companies and regional companies to raise capital for their own green projects. So they continue to add value and continue to educate your market with solid corporate governance practices, I believe, are what are required to maintain and grow stock markets.
Great, thank you, Andre, and maybe I'll have you field the next question as well, which would be, what caused the Jamaican Stock Exchange to have achieved what they've achieved in terms of its success? But just please keep it to maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I can answer that by just saying leadership, visionary leadership. We have had a very solid board, and we've been led by a managing director who never benchmarked our performance against ourselves or region, but she always thought globally. Why was it that we would not be able to do certain things that the London Stock Exchange is doing, that the New York Stock Exchange is doing, that Luxembourg is doing? That was the benchmark. So it's leadership and vision, a very supportive board as well, which encouraged us to do things and helped us to effectively punch way above our weight. And we see the same thing happening in Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana. Now we're trying to assist and work closely with Guyana to formalize more their capital markets, which will assist them in also managing growth. So it's really vision and solid leadership, Richard.
So now to sort of round out our discussions, and if anyone has any questions, I would encourage you to put them in the chat, and perhaps at a later session or maybe right after this call, we can send a readout of the call with your questions being answered by the panelists. So at this time, I'd like to ask the question, what do you believe are the key issues to be addressed in the Caribbean stock exchanges? But also if you can perhaps include what your proposed solution could be in about 3 to 4 minutes each. So perhaps Joy, if you can maybe kick us off on our final question. Thank you.
Sure. You had shared that question before with us. So last night I was thinking, gosh, besides, of course, climate change and the effect on our little islands is really an existential threat as we have rising seawaters. So that would be, it's expected to have a great negative long-term effect on the economies of the little Caribbean islands. So in order to, as stock exchanges, as Jamaica is saying, maybe an index to rate how our companies are doing in relation to environmental, social, and governance goals might be a useful way of seeing what we can do, because it is a much bigger issue than the companies in our islands, right? But I guess it would highlight the issue and demonstrate how we ourselves are trying to address the climate change as a whole. I think cybersecurity is a huge issue, because when you scan what the effect just on financial markets, in 2020, New Zealand, they had a huge attack on their website, which shut down their information for days. Warsaw, unfortunately, Poland apparently is subject to a lot of bad actor attacks, but their stock exchange was shut down for like days. And market players also have attacks which end up with very pernicious effects. There's a very big example of one of the major Chinese banks, which ended up had such an attack in 2023 that they had to do trades by running around with a USB drive. So I think disaster planning for cybersecurity, there's so much you can do. We ourselves have invested a lot in redundancies, workarounds, and liaised with other major entities in Trinidad and Tobago as how to respond, because a cyber attack will basically put us offline, and that's where we trade. So that's a big issue for investment, and it's cross-border because the cables that connect us are in the sea, and vulnerable to other effects coming, just I don't know, earthquakes in the sea, or the other part of it in the Caribbean, and I think this is particularly more Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. We're close to an area of potential, current political instability. And it's even larger now with the change in government in the US. So I think that too can have, depending on how it goes, can have a very big effect on stock exchanges and the way in which the economies go forth. I mean, the World Bank's most recent missive says that the Caribbean is going to grow at 2.5%, I think they said, is the outlook for 2024, 2.4% for 2025, which is good. Less than the global, and this Caribbean excludes Guyana, right? Because you would be the outlier. So, but the challenges in the region continue to be high debt and other macroeconomic factors in small economies. So all of that leads to a place where you're looking at a lot more regional cooperation. We've started off individually in the stock exchanges through the conferences and the personal relationships that people have. But I think certainly there has to be the allocation of more regional resources to shore up the vulnerabilities to cyber attacks, to increase our own action, such as it is in relation to climate change, and to look generally at the ways in which we can help each other with better governance practices, because learnings should be shared. We find that information, you look at the data that the people present, but in small islands, you also have to put your head up and see what's going on in the market in order to get a heads up on where companies may be going, because we've seen places with very good governance have terrible things happen when accounting firms aren't honest and the presentation of accounts are not as they are. So that as stock exchanges, we have to look at formal and informal sources of information to keep the pulse on what is going on in our markets, is my...
Richard, I would certainly endorse what Joyce said, and as it relates to what we need. Yesterday, there was a question at the conference which Marlon Yarde answered perfectly as it relates to regionalizing our exchanges for competitiveness. One thing I would say is in the year 2019, when Dr. Street Forest, our managing director, was in New York on the Bloomberg Network, speaking about the growth of the market and market capitalization, the moderator said, when she told them what the figure was, he said, okay, that's roughly the budget of Connecticut. So that just shows you exactly how small we actually are. So unification, I think Marlon can give us the best answer in terms of, because he's been working at this thing much longer than me in terms of regionalizing the exchange. Some progress has been made, but a long way to go. So I would yield to Marlon to make him answer on behalf of the Barbados and the Jamaica Stock Exchanges on that question.
Marlon, you're
Mute,
muted.
Marlon.
Yeah. Thanks. the commendation, Andre. But one of the things I've been saying, you know, I guess as I grow older, supposedly grow wiser. You know, when you're young, you feel you can take on the world and do everything and get this done and get that done. But I've learned that because of our size in the region and because our seemingly insignificance on the global stage, it's better if we work together as a region, not only integrating the capital markets, but in other things. We need to find ways to work together to create some sort of critical mass in how we do things, so that we become noticed by the other markets around the world. So even though you might do well, to example, Jamaica doing well in as it relates to their performance and ability to raise capital for SMEs, etc. We're still small, and so we need to find a way to come together. You know, we've tried it before with CXN, the Caribbean Exchange Network, where there was an arrangement between Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados, where we try to create one marketplace where if you are listed in one market and somebody from another market wants to trade those shares, instead of having to look for a broker in that market, you work directly with the broker in the jurisdiction that you wanted to work. And that didn't quite work out because, you know, there's still people wanting to protect their markets and not wanting to get other people involved. But we need to find a way. We need to find a way at the political level, the political will level to get this done. So we spoke about it at the conference. You know, every time I sit on a panel as it relates to the exchanges, I always bring it up because it's something I know our individual survival and our combined survival depends very much on it. So we need to have the political will to do it. You know, I mentioned the whole question of, you know, people are talking about a single stock exchange, but as Marlon put it yesterday, you know, maybe we can have a holding company that has the book, all the securities in one book, so that people can access the market, but use the individual stock exchanges as satellite exchanges to facilitate persons getting to that one book. And then the other thing is very important, the whole question of regulatory oversight. We don't like to talk about harmonization of rules, but we need to find a way that one body of rules applies to all the markets. Again, we're at different stages of development. Guyana is at a different stage than, say, Trinidad or Jamaica or Barbados, but we need to pull each other along so that we become attractive to local investors, regional investors, and also international investors. So we need to find a way to get that done. We need to probably look at having, and it's a concept that keeps coming up in my mind all the time, a supranational regulator for the region. Again, not having all these different sets of rules about the place, and we have one regulator that covers that regulates everybody. It's being done in Europe. The European regulator for capital markets gives directives, and it comes into play in each of the jurisdictions, each of the countries that they work in. We need to find a way to get it done. And I think, you know, we have a body in place already, CARICOM. Get CARICOM to do these things and get them agreed to by the heads of government so that we can push on. So that's how I see it. And I still have a few more years in me, so you'll be hearing that for a while yet. And even if and when I'm not at the stock exchange, it's something I'll be pushing. Maybe I can push it better outside the stock exchange, being that it's coming out of the system. You know, you say what has to be said, and you offer solutions that needs to be offered for consideration by all.
Great, thank you, Marlon. And now we'll just dive into our quick Q&As. So we do have two questions, both from Richard Young. So the first question would be, do exchanges conduct an annual introspection or self-audit on itself? For example, ask the listed companies if the exchange is meeting their needs. Maybe Andre, you can take the first crack at it, then over to Joy and Marlon.
Yes, we do. Good question, Richard. It's something that is part of our mandate. The annual customer survey takes place. That is one. The other thing is, though, we have informal ways because we're so busy with seminars, conferences on a weekly, monthly, annual, daily basis. There's always opportunity for almost instant feedback, and that assists us greatly. So our footprint, which is focused on transparency and focused on market education, gives us the opportunity to have continuous feedback. And in fact, several of the products that we have started, that we have launched over the last few years that has kept me very busy is as a result of not just broker-dealer feedback, but customer feedback as well. So the opportunity does exist, yes, and it's something that is very active at the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
If I may jump in, as Andre says, you get calls all the time from investors and issuers as it relates to what they think needs to be done. And I think I mentioned it in the conference yesterday. We need to listen to what the market is saying, and once our legislation allows it, we go ahead, we try to implement it. And even if our legislation doesn't allow it, we talk to our regulators and sell it to them. Make sure that, for example, as I keep saying, it doesn't harm the investor. It ensures fair and efficient transparency of the marketplace, and it doesn't cause any systemic risk in the marketplace. Once those objectives are in place, we try to implement those things. We don't have a formal setting, a formal survey that we do. But the other thing that happens too is that the directors that sit on my board are, for the most part, players in the marketplace. So they, if they want to see something done, they bring it to the entire board for consideration. Once it's not serving their own selfish interests, it will be considered, and we do that. So yes, informally and formally, these things are done at the exchanges to find out what's going on. I mean, I take it for example, even just before I came to Jamaica, one of our listing sponsors said, well, Marlon, you need to consider this particular issue. No more repeat it. And I considered it. I talked to the other listing sponsors and they agreed this is something we need to look at. Talk to my chairman, and then the next step is talk to the board and get the change made that they are requesting. So the important thing is to have that relationship with the participants, the issuers, the intermediaries, and the investors, so that you can remain relevant to what the needs of the market are. Thank you.
If I may, so we also, like Jamaica, we conduct an annual customer survey that goes to the participants and brokers, and we also have a lot of informal engagement. We go to them for, to vet possible new products and changes. And in fact, it was from the broker survey that we got feedback that led to a major investment that is ongoing right now at our depository side, the back office, to digitalize our operations. So that has been a huge project, which we're reaching out even into our intra custody services across the region, and trying to make ourselves more efficient and effective in terms of serving our customers. So we'll be quicker, better, faster in terms of doing the settlement side. And we've been reducing, and also partly due to customer feedback and wanting to make the market more liquid, we've been doing some regulatory changes. So we moved from T+3 to T+2, and as things get better, we were hoping to move even to shorter cycle times. So it's all towards better investor experience and more efficient running of our markets.
Great. So I have another question from Suling Chow. This question is, the presenters refer to listening to the market, ensuring relevance, encouraging and educating younger investors. At this time, perhaps from the surveys, can any of the presenters comment on how much of an influence are the impacts that listed companies have on the environment, on the social perceived ethical issues, have on investors' decisions, as to which companies they choose invest? Could this guide a future ESG index?
Well, I can take that one because we're on the road to that. We have a corporate governance index already. One of the requirements for your annual report is to state very specifically what you're doing in terms of CG. Similarly, the launch of the recent bond guide for green, sustainable, and sustainability linked bonds is the first step to developing your ESG standards, which we will incorporate. We will not yet mandatory, but we will, use some moral suasion to insist that in your annual reports, you speak to what your ESG activities are, ultimately leading to us forming an ESG index as well, which is going to be, I would expect, in the next 12 to 18 months with guidance from the CCGI as well, come up with an ESG index, which will form part of the requirements for annual reporting for listed companies.
Great, thank you very much, Andre. And I believe we had one more question. Now, maybe you can give it if it's a benchmark or it has a yes or no answer. So the question is, it would be interesting to know how much each exchange spends on investor education. That is a percentage of its annual budget.
Wow. I don't have that figure, but I know it's a lot.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair answer. Perhaps Joy or Marlon.
No, I let you I know we spend a fair set of money, not as much as we used to in previous years, but we spend a fair set of money in getting the word out there. We found out it to be more cost effective to use social media, and that's what we're tending to do. We also produce one or two infomercials, and we place it on our website. But the print media is expensive, and we're moving more towards social media to get our message out. So yeah, it is important to get the word out to people. Thank you.
From our stock exchange, I don't have the figures, but I do know that we've been, as I say, using the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, as well as we've had partnerships with our brokers in going out to various organizations to improve the investor pool. So it's investor education with our partners. And finally, we also had the same company that is doing the game for the primary schools in Jamaica. We also had partnered with them. And we have a few MOUs with industry organizations and in order to address the development of the SME market. So that's a quick and dirty summary of what we're doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Joy. And thank you, panelists, for such a rich discussion on corporate governance and its effectiveness for successful markets. And thank you very much, participants, for sharing your questions and concerns with us. At this point, I'd like to invite Ms. Kamala Rampasada Silva to provide some closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I want to thank you for really a very effective panel discussion and to say a very sincere thank you to our panelists, Andrew Gooden from the Jamaica Stock Exchange, Marlon Yarde from the Barbados Stock Exchange, and Joy Ramlogan from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. And I love how we ended the conversation as well in looking at investor education, because this is what will help build confidence in the marketplace. And we at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute would be very happy to continue our partnership with each of the stock exchanges to help bring these kinds of conversations out to the forefront as well, because building that confidence in the marketplace is key to us being able to continue to grow well in the region. A second area is collaboration, which was pointed out by this panel discussion already. Within the Caribbean region, the individual countries, we are small. There's strength in numbers. It's something that we preach as we grow our membership, that together we can do so much more. And so ensuring that we are able to deal with many of the challenges, and Joy mentioned them in this discussion. Climate change is impacting us. Cybersecurity is huge. And there are so many other issues in terms of what makes us vulnerable in the Caribbean region. And so together we'd be able to do so much more. And as we are saying goodbye here from Jamaica, I really want to point out again that Jamaica is such a shining example to us. And before we end, I want to share this and maybe even ask Andre if he could elaborate a little bit. I was really blown away when I learned in the conference that there is the Trans Jamaica Highway Limited, which is listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a state enterprise which listed in order to raise capital to build infrastructure in the country. And so it is the citizens themselves who are investing in this company, and that capital is being used to build the highway here in Jamaica. It's incredible the things that we can do if we build confidence in the market, if we demonstrate good governance practices, and so bring everyone on board to be able to invest in ourselves and improve in our environment. And also there was a lot of talk about the diaspora. The Caribbean has more of our nationals living outside of the region than in. Many of them who continue to love the region. And so they would be willing to also invest if we are able to give them the confidence that we are doing things right. And, having the examples set by Marlene Street Forward, as Andre said, it's vision. It's that quality of vision and leadership and the commitment of a good board. So our directors need to understand what is expected of them in their role and function if we are to succeed. So I want to thank everyone, all of our participants as well who joined us for today. I hope that you have all benefited tremendously, as I have, from listening to the contributions from each of the stock exchanges that were presented here. Richard, again, thank you so much. Guyana, of course, is a special market for us. We have every intention of focusing some time and energy there, that we can build confidence within the Guyanese market as well, that they begin to invest in the stock exchanges, and that together, all of us would be able to grow and learn from each other so that we could improve the quality of lives for everyone in the region. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful day. Marlon and I would be heading out to the airport in a little bit. So I sincerely thank Marlon that he made himself available here, for this conversation. It's a great start to our year here for CCGI, and we look forward to more of it. Just before I go, I did forget to mention this. The link has been shared to the survey for today's session. Please click on that link. It's in the chat. We do look forward to getting your feedback because, as Richard Young posed the question, you need to get feedback from your stakeholders to ensure that we're meeting the needs of everyone. So please make sure you give us your feedback. All right, Marlon, I saw you unmuted. Any final words?
No, I was just going to remind folks that when when it came to developing relationships with the region, the Barbados Stock Exchange was one of the first companies to go down to Guyana and sign an MOU with Gaski. So just getting it out there, you know, we know Johnny come ladies. We saw the possibility and we jumped in there early. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm happy that Richard, sitting now as Executive Director for Amcham Guyana, is in a position to be able to collaborate so easily with businesses throughout the region to help all of us, of course, to understand the Guyanese market as well, understand their needs as we embrace them at this time of their tremendous growth so that the Caribbean itself gets stronger as well. So thank you all very much. Joy, you did an amazing job. Thank you. It was your first time with us as a panelist, and this was great. Andre, you know you're going to be hearing from me constantly this year because there's so much that we want to be able to embrace from what is done here in Jamaica.
No problem.
Richard, thank
Safe
you. I look
travel.
forward to seeing you next month when I come to Guyana for the Energy Conference and possibly for CCGI to become members of Amcham Guyana as well, as we also deepen our relationships there. Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you next week. As I mentioned, it's the Red Flags Workshop. How do you identify fraud in your financial statements? And then we end this month on Friday with a panel discussion on AI and cybersecurity. So a lot for us to do this year.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very
Safe travel.
much.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Safe
Okay.
travel.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.